Hello and welcome to this episode of The Arts Overlook. I'm your host, Chris Bowden. Each episode highlights the arts and entertainment of the Cedar Valley. In this episode, we'll be stepping into the realm of woodworking for an in-depth look at a long-lasting, intricate, and usable area of art being created right here in Cedar Falls. This edition of The Arts Overlook starts right now.
Art is thriving in the Cedar Valley. It's everywhere. But if you don't know where to look, you could miss it. This is your local arts perspective. This is the Arts Overlook.
For thousands of years, people have been using the art of woodworking to create pipes for both practical and artistic purposes. And if some of us think back to memories of our grandfathers or even great-grandfathers, we may come across one or two mental images of them smoking a pipe for themselves. Surrounded by a rich history and a new cultural resurgence, the art of pipe making is starting to gain some newfound popularity. With that in mind, we stopped in the workshop of Tyler Huck, a local Cedar Falls woodworker, to learn about the art of shaping a simple block of wood into a fully fledged pipe. Here's an inside look at Huck's pipes. Art is hiding in all sorts of places across the Cedar Valley, and one unique area of woodwork you may not be aware of is the world of tobacco pipe making. Working out of a shop in his basement, Cedar Falls artist Tyler Huck, better known as Huck, has taken what began as a hobby to a whole new level.
I started smoking pipes when I was 18, so I got straight into pipes and cigars right away. Never really messed with anything else, and just thought I'd like to give it a shot. And I've always been the kind of guy, and I wanted to know how it worked. So I started off with the corncob pipe, and then kind of moved from there and bought pipes and thought, well, I think I should try it. I think I'd give it a shot and see how making it goes. It was like my Christmas break of 2010 when I was still a college student, still a freshman in college. And I just bought a block of wood and a pre-made pipe stem. And Emily's grandpa was actually a woodworker, is a woodworker. So I just borrowed his shop for kind of a weekend, just kind of planted and made it happen. So I still have my first one around. It's still there. And yeah, I've kept it.
Consisting of several different interlocking parts, pipe making requires a wide variety of woodworking skills, ranging from larger cuts to more detail-oriented work.
My first run at it was a single block and a pre-made stem, and it's progressed all the way to hand cutting my own stems and different blocks and sizes and different inlays and different stuff. And how I got from A to B was ultimately selling stuff off and buying more tools. So I started borrowing tools, setting up in someone else's workshop, and progressively bought my own stuff. I've got to my right here a drill press that's this tall. I started off with a drill press that was about this tall, and the machine to my left just a little sander. And from there, I just got progressively more out of control with it.
As Tyler has honed his craft, his work has been successful enough to start his own business known as Huck's Pipes. And as the business continues to gain popularity, it allows him the self-sufficiency to create even more intricate pieces.
I think what's neat is to see, so like I said, I've got my very first pipe, and I've got the most recent, and it's interesting to see a direct side-by-side of those types of things, to see, like, man, what was I thinking? You know, how did that work, and how, you know, what was the inspiration behind stuff, and then to see how far I've come as a technician, but also kind of as an artist. You know, that's the coolest thing to me about pipes, is that it's practical, it's usable art, and so I think being able to to put myself into that and to say that I made something that someone is going to enjoy, but it's also going to use. I think that those are cool things and very unique to pipes.
For the last 2 years, both Tyler and his wife Emily have traveled down to the St. Louis Pipe Show, an annual convention that provides the opportunity for Tyler to network, learn, and sell some of his own work.
The St. Louis Pipe Show, it's held in St. Louis, and at St. Charles. And it is a room full of guys who are interested and into pipes. Everything from guys who run their own tobacco stores to growers, producers, distributors of tobacco, to pipe makers like myself, to guys who are actually importers. So there's a whole line of business that just imports pipes, and they have a brand that they represent, and they bring them from Europe to the US or from US to Europe, and just all of that. So you get a pretty wide range of different businesses that are involved, which is really, really neat. You meet a lot of people, which is really neat. Like any niche market, like any conference, you just meet people who are like-minded, and that you at least have something that's interesting to both of you, right? Especially in the world of pipes, it's just kind of not something that people do much of anymore. And so to see a connection at that level with people is kind of a cool thing. Very unique, unique to going to those types of shows.
If you start spending even a brief period of time around pipes, it's clear how diverse and detailed the work can become. Ranging by size, shape, color, and even texture, no two pipes are ever the same. Each piece is truly its own work of art.
There's kind of two main types of pipes you see, and it's pretty straightforward. It's either a straight pipe or a bent pipe, and that's kind of what you get. And within that, there's a range and plethora of designs and shapes and very specific ideas and concepts and everything else. And so one example, so this would be a straight pipe. It's exactly what you might think it would be. It is a straight all the way through the stem here. And this type of pipe is really popular all throughout the world. Everyone is very familiar with these types of pipes. Their grandpa probably had 5 or 6 of them at some point in time, right? And then there's a bent pipe. This is an extreme example, but this is a full bent or an ompal shape. There's kind of two ideas. The bent pipe is nice because when you put it in your mouth, it kind of just hangs there. You're able to let it go, and you don't have to worry too much about it staying put. Straight pipe generally is the same idea, but it's all about preference, really. And you'll see guys who really prefer one or the other, or have strong desire to go in either direction. I'm all about variety, I'm all about collecting, so for me, it's just about what looks good. If the lines flow well, you know, something like this is a really nice piece because everything just works together. And so yeah, it's about variety and collecting, I think, for me.
The oldest form of smoking tobacco, pipe making can be documented as far back as 500 BC. And while the types of pipes and materials have changed, the stories and sense of community they bring have remained the same.
There's two types of stories, and it's one, just a random person who contacts you and says, hey, I want you to make this for me. And you get those, we call those kind of commission pieces, where someone just saw your work and said, you know what, I like it enough that I would like to have one of my own. And that's really cool, right? That's like honoring as an artist and as a maker and everything else. And to even take that a step further, kind of a different area, is when you get to be part of something for someone. So I've had several cases where people will be buying an anniversary, Christmas, birthday gift for someone, and they want a pipe. One of the kind of more special ones for me was a friend from high school whose grandpa was kind of declining in health, and he decided, you know what, I'm kind of on the way out and I'm gonna pick pipe smoking back up. And so I got to make a pipe for him, and you know, he passed away a couple months back, and to know that I was part of a gift in someone's life like that, you know, pretty cool. Pretty cool that I got to be part of some form of solace, some form of enjoyment in someone's life. I think that those things are pretty special. So it's stuff like that where I just keep on. It makes it worth the long hours and frustration of getting stuff right, just to be part of someone's story. Step one, getting your materials assembled. So it's a challenge. They're not readily available at Menards, so you have to find someone who sells them, who carries them. And there's two parts to a pipe. You have the bowl portion where your tobacco goes into, and then you have a stem portion. The bowl is made of a specific wood called briarwood. It's a bush that grows in kind of the Mediterranean region. It grows in sand, so it's very dense. It's fire retardant. So you have to get that. Briarwood is mostly used. There's other types of materials, but that's what I work in. And then your actual stem portion, the portion that goes in your mouth, can be made out of a range of materials as well. I use a material called ABS or Absolux. It's a plastic material. And so yeah, you have to get your materials together. So this is briarwood, Briarwood comes in a burl about that big, and gets cut into these little portions that kind of get sold out. The first thing you go through and do is mark out tobacco chamber. So I use this ruler. This is the same size as the bit that I use, and so I actually mark out on the side here a 3/4 inch tobacco chamber with pencil first. And then you go through, mark out a draft hole. Draft holes going from the tobacco chamber to the mouthpiece, the stem portion. So you mark this out next, and we'll draw in the bottom of the bowl. And this just gives us a reference on how deep to drill. If it's written out here, you know it's going to be the same on the inside of the bowl. It just gives you a good reference. And then I'll actually go in and kind of shape out what type of pipe I want to be making. So if I want to make a specific shape, or see something that I want to do, I'll actually mark that out on the side here. And last step is to draw in our tenon slot, and gives us another guesstimation on where we're going to end up with that tenon. But the biggest thing is that this connection right at the bottom of the bowl is perfect. You want it both at the right depth, but also left to right this way. You want it dead center of that bowl. So a bit of a complicated procedure, but when you line things up on the outside, it gives you a good template to start with. So we're done here. You go ahead and make a mark on the center, so you get kind of your X and Y axes marked out. And this is square with the center of the bowl here, and then square with the middle of the pipe. And so we'll get to drilling. What I'm doing here is just taking the side of this drill bit and actually looking past it and lining it up with the line that I had drawn earlier. This method is called freehand drilling, so it's where you're actually taking the pipe and drilling it out by hand. And the benefit to this is that you can actually line up this axis and then turn it to the right and make sure that this axis is square too. This is one of the earlier forms of pipe making, was the freehand, and it's seen a lot in European work. Bring the clamp back out and start drilling out our tobacco chamber. Same kind of process. I'll line up the lines we drew out earlier with the side of the bit. Make sure that those are square. I'll start with this pilot line using the 3/4 inch Forstner bit. Once I've got a pretty good hole started, I'll switch out to a modified spoon bit. The bit's rounded, so you get to the bottom of the tobacco chamber and it's actually drilling out a rounded hole. Drilled right to the bottom of the well. And then I'll just take and make sure that that is rounded out. That'll be another freehand drilling. So the motor I use here is a variable speed AC/DC motor, and what it does is it actually cranks down horsepower and cranks down RPMs through this dial here. So I can adjust all the way up to 1600 and all the way down to about 180. And what that lets me do is use a really heavy grit, 50 grit grinder right here, and then I'll actually step it down to these wheels here. This one is in the 320, this one's a 180. So I'll work it down all the way to 320, and from there take it over and do hand sanding. These wheels are homemade. It's 3 pieces. You've got a back piece that holds all of it together. You've got a front plate that's angled here so you can get into corners and such. And then this is sandpaper over felt, so it gives it a little bit more give. And then the bolts that go through and hold it in place. These are great because I can just take my wheel, spin it off, pop in the next grit, and I'm set to go. So eventually you go through your grits, you go through 50, 180, 320, and you get all the way up to something like this. This is a shaped, pretty much most of the way sanded piece. I'll show you what the grain did for me. And at this stage you can pretty well see the finished product, what you'll be working with as you start into your staining process. So we've got it sanded down to 400 grit. Next step is to take a stain. This is an alcohol-based stain, and I just take a paintbrush here, get some of the excess off, and I'll go through and get it stained here. I have to double dip most of the time, and that's okay. Biggest thing is make sure you get every nook and cranny stained. Doesn't have to be pretty to start, but just enough to get down into everything. Okay, so you can probably see my pipe is still wet with stain. This process is called firing because it's alcohol based. You can actually burn off all your excess just like that. So it's actually burning off all the alcohol, but my stain stays put. You can see in here it's even taking a while because of all of my little divots. But once that's all finished up, you've got a pipe that's ready to cool down and be buffed. Okay, so we've got our bowl shaped here. Next thing you got to go and do is your stem. This is a lathe. It's an Atlas 618 lathe. It was made in the 50s, so it's much older than I am, but it works great. For this purpose, it's a metal lathe and has auto indexing so you can get precision cuts. What I'm going to do is first turn the tenon portion. The tenon's the male end that'll go and fit into the end of our bowl here, our stummel, and it has to be a precision fit, so we'll go in a couple spots and test it out, make sure it's fitting all right. So let's jump in. So we got it pretty close here. Next step is just kind of take and we'll make small passes at it, try to get a real tight fit. You don't want it too tight so that you can't move it around, but if it's too loose it'll fall right out and your stem is entirely worthless. So a bit of a balancing act, but we'll keep working at it. So we got it fitting pretty well. Good snug fit, it's not wobbling around. You don't want it to be running out on you at all. So we'll take and make sure that everything's run up from here. We're going to do an inlay on this stem, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a bit. For time being, we are pretty much set for this stem work. So here's an example of something I finished about 3 months ago. This is a finished pipe. It's got all the staining done, all the stem work done. This one has an inlay on it. As you can see, this is olive wood here, and same that we'll be doing to the other one, but just wanted to give you an example of what this will end up looking like. The stem is shaped with hand files and rasps and all the rest, and is bent with heat. So heat it up and bend it to whatever shape you want, and then dip it in water to solidify it. It goes through 4 phases of finishing here. We go through 2 tripolis on the wheel, different buffing compounds, go through a carnauba wax on the wheel, and then a couple of finishing grade wheels, and that is the process of making a pipe. So I had mentioned that pipes are about stories, at least a little bit, and I've got 3 of them here that are pretty important to me, kind of monumental to my story. This one right here, if you can see it at all, is this is the first pipe I ever made. It's affectionately called the golf ball, because really it just has a bunch of little divots in it that I thought looked cool. But you can see pretty rough shaping job, pretty elementary. But man, to smoke this thing for the first time, to see it work for the first time, it was just something else. It was just something very treasured. So I've held on to this one since 2010, and it's just a good reminder to me of how far I've come in this craft, in this art. This one here was the first pipe I ever bought that's kind of into the craftsman, artisan made. It's a near-up pipe. He's a Scandinavian fella, and I bought this at a smoke shop in Nashville, Tennessee, called Uptown Smoke Shop. Bought it for myself, just as an encouragement to continue on in pipe making, and pretty big deal. This one was very special to me. So this pipe is the most recent one I've acquired. I bought it from the St. Louis Pipe Show this last year, as my second year having a table there. This is by a pipe maker named Grant Batson. And Grant is one of the guys who I follow on Instagram and have really just drawn a lot of encouragement from and a lot of inspiration and shapes from. I was able to pick this up for a price much lower than I ought to have, because I had kind of told someone my story about following Grant and really wanting to be like him. And so this one's very special to actually have the work of someone who I admire, someone who I've really looked up to for a long time in this world of pipes. Behind me here, it's kind of my most prized pipe possession. Right here is my grandpa's pipe rack. And this thing has 3 pipes, here, and here, that he had before he had passed away. And I asked my grandma if I could hold on to that for him, and she was glad to let me do it. What's even kind of cooler about this one is that my grandma lost her house to a fire about 6 months after I had acquired this pipe rack, and so it would have been lost to the fire if I had not pulled it out. And so this one's very special to have, and kind of a family piece for me. So just goes to show how much that this can be a part of stories, just a part of what's been going on in life and different things that have happened throughout time, and just kind of shows some good benchmarks along the way, and has a lot of story and history wrapped up in it.
Thanks again to both Emily and Tyler Huckfelt for allowing me into their home to share a part of their story. If you happen to be interested in viewing or purchasing one of Huck's pipes, or getting more information on the world of pipe making, you can get in touch with him through his Facebook page, Huck's Pipes, email him at thuckfelt@yahoo.com, or give him a call at 319-491-3680. That's all for this episode of The Arts Overlook. I'm Chris Bowden, and thank you for watching.